Most people think they're in love, but what they really have is attachment. And that's why they feel drained, suffocated, and constantly afraid of losing the person they're with. It back. Love and attachment look similar on the surface, but one gives you freedom and peace, while the other traps you in fear and control. If you've ever questioned why your relationships feel heavy instead of light, this message will change the way you see love forever. Welcome to Connected Souls. I'm Leila Hormozi, here to help you heal, grow, and thrive in love. Attachment often disguises itself as love. But its core is built on fear. Fear of not abandoned, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing control over someone we want to keep. This fear creates a desperate grip that mistakes possession for passion. The problem is anything built on fear cannot last without pain because fear consumes more than it gives. Love, on the other hand, does not need chains to survive. It thrives in freedom. True love allows space because it understands that closeness is not about suffocation, but about choice. It doesn't trap another person into staying. It inspires them to stay. That is where the difference lies. Stay it back. Attachment clings because it's scared, while love releases because it's secure. When people confuse attachment with love, they often end up suffocating the very connection they are trying to protect back. Think about the times when someone wanted to know your every move, not out of care, but out of insecurity. It feels heavy, not comforting, because attachment seeks to control rather than nurture. This control is disguised as concern, but beneath it lies anxiety. Love works differently because it is not afraid of distance. It knows that distance does not mean disconnection. Instead, it back. Love trusts that even in silence, even in space, the bond remains strong. Love does not check constantly to confirm it still exists. It lives confidently in its presence. Attachment is always conditional. It says, back. I need you to stay because without you, I feel empty. It builds its strength on dependency, which means when the other person pulls away, the world feels like it collapses. That is why attachment often comes with jealousy, obsession, and a desperate need for reassurance. Love, however, is unconditional in its foundation. It says, I want you in my life because I value who you are. Back, not because I am nothing without you. Love doesn't come from a place of emptiness, but from a place of fullness. It adds to life rather than filling a void. This is why love feels lighter, back, while attachment feels heavy. When someone is attached, they are focused more on themselves than on the other person. They think, how do you make me feel? How do you complete me? This makes relationships transactional, where affection is only given if expectations are met. Love does not measure in this way. Back, love is selfless in nature because it sees the other person as someone to be appreciated, not used. It celebrates individuality rather than trying to consume it. Back, love knows that the other person's happiness is not a threat, but a reflection of shared growth. That is why love doesn't fear freedom. It encourages it. Attachment suffocates because it does not trust, constantly seeks confirmation, constantly doubts, constantly asks for more proof. The moment something feels uncertain, attachment panics because its security depends on control. Love, in contrast, is built on trust. It doesn't need to monitor or question every action. It doesn't live in paranoia about what could go wrong. Love is calm because it rests in faith, not in fear. That faith makes room for freedom. Back, and freedom allows relationships to breathe. Without breathing space, no bond can last. That is why love survives where attachment breaks. Many people settle for attachment thinking it is love because it feels intense. Emotional highs and lows make them believe they're experiencing something powerful. But intensity alone is not love. It is dependency, adrenaline, and fear dressed up as passion. Love doesn't always scream loudly. Back. Sometimes it is quiet and steady. It doesn't shake you with chaos. It grounds you with peace. Love is not about needing someone desperately, but about choosing them freely. That choice, again and again, back, creates stability, not chaos. Attachment fades when needs aren't met, but love grows even when circumstances change. Attachment also limits growth because it clings to what is familiar, even when it becomes unhealthy. Back, it says, don't leave, don't change, don't evolve, because I might lose you. It resists transformation because change feels like a threat. Love, however, embraces growth because it understands that change is natural, it adapts, it evolves, and it finds new ways to connect. Love doesn't shrink when life shifts, it expands to fit the new reality. Back. That's why relationships rooted in love survive storms, because they bend instead of breaking. Attachment shatters under pressure, but love finds a way forward. There is also a deep difference in how attachment and love handle pain. Attachment reacts to pain with anger, accusations, and attempts to control more tightly. It believes pain means rejection, back, and rejection means collapse. Love, however, sees pain as part of growth. It processes it with patience and seeks to understand rather than to dominate. Love doesn't avoid discomfort because it knows discomfort leads to maturity. Instead of pulling tighter, love opens wider, allowing healing and compassion to flow. That's why love feels safe even when challenges arise, while attachment feels like walking on glass. When you look closely, attachment is rooted in scarcity, and love is rooted in abundance. Attachment says, there isn't enough, so I must hold on tightly to what I have. Love says, there is enough, and because I trust in that, I don't need to cling. This difference changes everything about how we relate to others. Attachment consumes energy, drains joy, and leaves people feeling trapped. Love restores energy, uplifts it back, and creates a sense of freedom. Attachment always fears loss, but love celebrates presence. Attachment is about keeping, while love is about cherishing. That is why the two can never truly feel the same. Back. At the end of the day, the difference between attachment and love comes down to choice. Attachment demands, controls, and restricts because it fears being left behind. Love, on the other hand, allows, supports, back, and trusts because it knows freedom strengthens connection. One is built on insecurity, the other on faith. One imprisons, the other liberates. When we confuse attachment for love, we trap ourselves in cycles of pain. Back. But when we choose love over attachment, we discover that the deepest connections are those where both people are free, yet still choose to stay. Attachment demands because it thrives on the mindset of scarcity. It says, back. I need you to do this for me. I need you to show me. I need you to prove it again. The foundation of attachment is never enough, no matter how much is given. It always asks for more because it feeds on insecurity. Back. Love, however, flows in the opposite direction. It is not needy, nor does it wait for constant validation. Love gives without keeping score and without holding conditions. Love adds value instead of draining it back. Where attachment is about taking to feel complete, love is about overflowing and sharing what is already whole inside. When you live from a place of attachment, relationships become transactional. You give only when you know you will receive something in return, and when you don't, resentment builds. It feels like a constant trade, and the focus shifts from appreciation to entitlement. You expect gestures, words, back, or actions to reassure you that you matter. This creates pressure that crushes even the strongest bonds. Love does not operate under pressure because it is not conditional. Love gives for the sake of giving back, not because it expects repayment. It finds joy in the act itself, not in the outcome. Love offers without looking back to see if something is returned. Attachment is often mistaken for care, but in reality, back, it is rooted in dependency. It wants the other person to fill the empty spaces within, to heal the wounds it refuses to address. That is why it clings so tightly, asking for more proof, more time, more energy. Love, in contrast, does not come from emptiness. It comes from fullness. It does not demand that someone else become the source of its happiness. Instead, it chooses to share that happiness with others. Love says, back, I am whole, and I want to give to you from that wholeness. Attachment says, I am incomplete, so I need you to make me feel better. That is the difference between taking and giving. Back, the weight of attachment is heavy because it is always pulling energy inward. It is concerned with needs, fears, and insecurities, which leads to exhaustion for both sides. One person feels drained from giving endlessly, back, while the other feels trapped by constant expectations. Love doesn't drain because it gives freely and without conditions. It doesn't suffocate, it doesn't pressure, and it doesn't cling. Love has an ease to it. Even when challenges arise, it creates a sense of abundance where both people feel enriched instead of depleted. This is why love feels light. It does not demand energy, it generates it. Back, another difference is how attachment and love respond to disappointment. Attachment reacts with anger, withdrawal, or manipulation because its expectations weren't met. It takes disappointment as a personal attack. Back, proof that isn't valued enough. Love, on the other hand, responds with patience and understanding. Love doesn't tally mistakes or hold grudges as leverage. It sees the bigger picture, not just the momentary letdown. Because love gives without expecting a return, it does not crumble when things go wrong. Instead, it extends grace, choosing to focus on the strength of the bond rather than the weakness of the moment. Attachment thrives in fear of loss, so it constantly seeks control. It wants to control actions, emotions, back, and decisions to ensure security. But the more it controls, the more suffocating the relationship becomes. Love does not fear freedom because it knows freedom strengthens bonds. It allows people to make choices, to grow back, and to evolve without fear of abandonment. Love respects individuality while attachment tries to erase it. Love says, I want to give to you even if you walk away. Attachment says, back, I will give only if you stay. That is why love is expansive, while attachment is restrictive. Attachment looks outward, always waiting for someone else to provide validation. It depends on constant reminders, back, words of affection, acts of devotion, gestures that prove worth. But love does not chase validation because it is rooted in security. Love gives without fear that it will run out. It back. It trusts that what is offered will find its place, even if it is not returned in equal measure. Love is not concerned with proving itself. It is simply expressed. Attachment says, prove to me that I am enough. Love says, I will give to you because I already know I am enough. This shift changes everything. When people confuse attachment with love, in fact, they often feel exhausted by relationships. They wonder why nothing feels enough, why no matter how much they receive, the emptiness remains. That is because attachment cannot be satisfied. It is built on fear, back, and fear always needs more. Love, however, creates fulfillment. When you give without keeping score, joy multiplies. Giving becomes a reward in itself. The act of offering time, care, or energy creates meaning. This is why love deepens with time, while attachment weakens. One is fueled by abundance, the other by scarcity. One grows stronger, the other grows more fragile. Attachment's demands can often push people away because no one wants to live under constant pressure. It becomes draining to meet expectations that never end. Love, however, back. It draws people closer because it creates a safe environment where giving is natural. People want to be around love because it feels freeing, not heavy. It is not about meeting quotas, but about sharing moments. In fact, this is why love inspires more love. It creates a cycle of giving that fuels itself. Attachment, on the other hand, creates a cycle of taking that eventually collapses under its own weight. The two may look similar at first, but their outcomes are completely different. At the core, the difference lies in intention. Attachment asks, what can you do for me to make me feel secure? Love asks, what can I do to make you feel valued and supported? Attachment turns relationships into contracts with hidden terms and expectations. Love transforms them into spaces of freedom, back where giving is not measured but simply lived. Attachment demands because it is afraid of losing. Love gives because it knows that giving is the truest expression of strength. It back. That is the essence of their difference. One consumes, the other creates. Attachment is centered on self-interest, while love is centered on the well-being of the other person. When someone is attached, it back. They are primarily concerned with how the relationship makes them feel. They want reassurance, validation, and attention because their focus is on their own needs being met. Love, however, shifts the focus outward, back. It is about seeing and honoring the other person for who they are, not who you want them to be. Love asks, what do you need? Instead of what can I get? That shift in focus changes everything. Back, love prioritizes presence over possession, care over control, and support over selfish desire. Attachment operates like a mirror, reflecting back only what you want to see. Back, it molds people into roles that serve your comfort and security. You may ignore their individuality, dreams, or struggles if they don't align with your needs. Love, however, back is not about molding, it is about witnessing. It sees the other person fully, even the parts that don't serve your convenience. Love celebrates differences, respects individuality, and embraces growth. Back, attachment cannot handle change because it threatens comfort. Love welcomes change because it understands growth is a part of life. That is why love creates space for authenticity while attachment pressures conformity. Back, when relationships are built on attachment, they become fragile because they are tied to expectations. If the other person doesn't act a certain way, the bond feels threatened. This is why attachment often leads to disappointment and resentment. Love, in contrast, is not dependent on performance. It values the person, not just their actions. Love says, I accept you even when you don't meet my expectations. This acceptance builds resilience in relationships. Love is not blind, it sees flaws, but it chooses compassion over criticism. Attachment, back, on the other hand, is quick to judge because it fears losing what it depends on. That fear makes it conditional while love remains steady. Attachment often mistakes possession for connection. It says, you are mine, back, and therefore you should behave according to my script. It tries to control, dictate, or restrict to maintain security. Love does not see another person as property. Love knows that control kills connection, back, while freedom strengthens it. When you love someone, you allow them to be fully themselves without demanding they shrink to fit your comfort. It back. You want them to flourish even if it means they grow in directions that stretch you. Attachment cannot handle that level of freedom because it feels unsafe. Love thrives on that freedom because it is built on trust, but not fear. The real test of whether you are operating from attachment or love shows up during conflict. Attachment reacts with defensiveness, blame, or withdrawal because it feels attacked. Back. It makes everything about self-preservation and how the disagreement threatens its security. Love, however, listens. Love doesn't react to win, but to understand. Back. Love recognizes that conflict is not the end, but an opportunity to deepen understanding. It is patient and willing to repair rather than run or control. Back. Attachment escalates conflict because it is always protecting itself. Love softens conflict because it is always protecting the bond. That is the difference between reacting from fear and responding from care. Back. Attachment thrives on dependency because it needs the other person to fill its void. It says, I need you to make me happy, to make me feel safe, complete me. This dependency puts unbearable weight on the relationship, making the other person responsible for emotions that should be self-owned. Love, in contrast, is rooted in self-sufficiency. Back, it doesn't demand completion from another person, it shares wholeness with them. Love says, I am enough on my own and I choose to give to you. That choice comes from strength, not weakness. Back, attachment clings because it's afraid of standing alone. Love holds lightly because it knows it can stand whether someone stays or leaves. Another sign of attachment is conditional support. When things are going well and the other person behaves as expected, attachment feels satisfied. But when difficulties arise or behaviors change, attachment pulls back its support. Love is consistent. Back. It shows up in moments of joy and in moments of struggle. Love is not seasonal. It is present through storms and sunshine. Attachment asks, what are you doing for me right now? Love asks, back, how can I be there for you right now? That consistency builds trust, the kind of trust that deepens connections over time. Attachment breaks under pressure. Love grows stronger through it. Attachment is always about control of outcomes. It needs assurance of where the relationship is going, constant proof of devotion, and a guarantee that things will never change. But life is uncertain, back, and relationships evolve with time. Love doesn't cling to guarantees because it understands that real connection is fluid. Love adapts to new seasons, new challenges, and new circumstances without losing its essence. Take it back. It doesn't demand permanence to feel secure. It allows the bond to evolve naturally. Attachment resists change because it fears loss. Love embraces change because it trusts growth. That trust allows it to endure what attachment cannot. Attachment often interprets love as sacrifice, but the truth is its sacrifice is authenticity. It asks the other person to give up parts of themselves to maintain peace. Back. This creates resentment, silence, and distance over time. Love, on the other hand, does not ask for self-erasure. It honors authenticity. It encourages each person to show up fully, even when it's uncomfortable. Back, I love does not require shrinking, it requires expansion. That expansion may stretch both people, but it strengthens the connection because it is built on truth. Attachment survives only in comfort zones. Back, love thrives in growth zones. That is why love endures while attachment withers. At its core, attachment is about possession, while love is about presence. Attachment clings tightly, hoping to secure its place by holding on harder. Love holds loosely, allowing space for both people to breathe. Attachment is self-centered, always asking, how do you make me feel? Love is selfless, asking, how can I support you to grow? One diminishes, the other amplifies. One takes, the other gives. This is why relationships rooted in attachment feel draining, while relationships rooted in love feel liberating. Back. The difference is simple yet profound. Attachment is about you, but love is always about them. Attachment is always temporary because it is built on conditions that cannot hold forever. It clings tightly. Back. Depending on circumstances, moods, and external factors that are bound to shift. When the person changes, when life evolves, when things no longer look the same, attachment begins to weaken. It cannot adapt because it was never strong enough to survive transformation. Love, however, is not bound by conditions. It flows with change, adjusts to seasons, and transforms alongside growth. Back. Love doesn't fear endings because it knows how to evolve into new forms. It remains steady not because circumstances stay the same, but because the heart chooses to remain present. That choice makes it unshackable. Attachment thrives on control, and control can only last for so long before it cracks. It requires predictability, routines, and assurance that nothing will shift too much. But life never stays still. Back, and the attempt to freeze it always leads to frustration. Love, on the other hand, accepts impermanence. It understands that nothing remains identical forever. People grow, circumstances change, and new challenges appear. Rather than resisting, love embraces this flow as part of the journey. It doesn't collapse when things evolve, it adapts. That is why attachment fades quickly, but love matures gracefully with time. Back. Love doesn't just endure, it deepens. When faced with obstacles, attachment reacts with panic. It feels threatened by distance, disagreements, or change in attention. It sees problems as signs of collapse. Back. Love sees problems differently. It doesn't run away when things get difficult. It steps forward with patience and resilience. Love treats challenges as opportunities to strengthen the bond. It knows that growth often requires discomfort and that resilience is built through storms, not sunshine. Attachment, however, cannot withstand storms because its roots are shallow. The moment discomfort arrives, attachment begins to crumble. Love's roots are deep enough to weather uncertainty, which is why it lasts when attachment fails. Attachment has an expiration date because it is driven by what it gains in the moment. Once the excitement fades, once the novelty wears off, once the needs aren't being met, it weakens. It cannot survive without constant fuel. Love, in contrast, renews itself from within. Back. It is not dependent on novelty, but on consistency. Love isn't looking for the thrill of possession, but for the peace of connection. That peace doesn't fade when the newness is gone. It grows stronger with time. Back. This is why love ages beautifully, while attachment fades into bitterness or emptiness. Love is sustainable because it doesn't demand, it evolves. Attachment always fears endings, and that fear leads to desperation. Back. It holds on tighter, becoming more restrictive, more suffocating, and more demanding. This creates tension that pushes the other person away faster. Back. Love is not afraid of endings because it knows that endings are just transformations. Even if seasons change, love finds a way to take new shape. Love's focus is not on clinging, but on cherishing. It says, back. If you stay, I will celebrate you. If you grow, I will support you. If you leave, I will still wish you well. That openness creates trust and security. Attachment breaks under the fear of endings. Back, while love grows even through them. Another difference is the way attachment and love view freedom. Attachment is terrified of freedom because it sees it as a risk of loss. It tries to bind, restrict it back, and control in order to feel secure. Love sees freedom as essential because love without choice is not love at all. When someone chooses to stay out of freedom, the connection becomes stronger. It is no longer about force, but about genuine desire. Attachment's fear makes it collapse when freedom is exercised. Love's trust makes it grow stronger when freedom is honored. Back. This is why love continues to evolve. It doesn't fear space, it thrives in it. Attachment is fragile because it relies on external factors like attention, validation, and possession. When those external factors shift, back, the foundation crumbles. Love is unshakable because its foundation is internal. Trust, respect, and commitment. These qualities do not disappear with distance or change, they adapt. Love can survive silence, absence, and challenges because it doesn't rely solely on the surface. It builds on something deeper. Attachment fades when the conditions no longer feed it. Back, love endures because it is not dependent on constant fuel. It generates its own strength. This is why love can evolve endlessly while attachment eventually runs out of power. Attachment is always about survival, while love is about growth. Survival energy clings to the familiar, avoiding change at all costs. Growth energy embraces transformation, seeking meaning even in endings. This difference explains why attachment burns out quickly. It is too afraid of change to adapt. Love continues to evolve because it sees change as natural. When people grow, when life shifts, when circumstances evolve, back, love grows alongside them. Attachment resists these changes and eventually breaks. Love flows with them and becomes stronger. That adaptability makes love timeless. That resistance makes attachment temporary. Back. When you look back, you will notice that the most meaningful relationships were not built on attachment, but on love. Attachment created moments of intensity, but they didn't last. Love created moments of depth that carried through time. Love didn't fear silence, distance, or change. It welcomed them as part of the journey. Attachment collapsed when those same things appeared because it was not built to endure them. The truth is, attachment may feel powerful at the start, but it cannot stand the test of time. Love is quieter, steadier, back, but it evolves endlessly. That is why it remains long after attachment fades away. In the end, attachment always ends, but love evolves. Attachment clings desperately, hoping to preserve what cannot be preserved. Take it back. Love adapts, expands, and transforms, keeping the bond alive even when circumstances shift. That is the defining difference. One breaks under change, the other thrives through it. When we understand this truth, it back. We stop chasing attachment disguised as love and begin cultivating the kind of love that grows with us. Love is not about holding on, it is about growing together. And when you choose love over attachment, back, you discover a connection that not only lasts, but becomes stronger with every season of life. If this touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join our soul family.